Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here to Vanguard and coming to see us. My name is Melissa Grove. I'm with Design Dash. I'm also here with my co-founder, Lori Mansky. And hello. With Thom Filicia, who really needs no introduction, but I think we have one from here.
I can introduce.
Very sweet. Good morning, everybody.
Introduce the hell out of you.
Hi. Thanks for being here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, we love having you here. Yep. So we had a lovely tour yesterday with Thom of his collection downstairs and got to learn all about it. And if you haven't seen it yet, you have to go today, like right after this, and go check it out. But I want to know, so you design residences, hotels, product. Where are you drawing your inspiration? This is a lot of different things.
Yes, I would say so. Inspiration. I mean, how many designers are here? Okay. Wow. So it's a lot of designers. That's great. So I think we're probably all kind of in the same boat in terms of where are we getting our inspiration from? I mean, very often when you're starting, whether it's a residential project or let's say a hotel project, or you're doing your client's office, or you're looking at sort of what typifies that situation. What is that brand? Who is that family? How are they living? Is this a primary residence? Is it a secondary residence? If it's a commercial brand or a hotel brand, something like that, a restaurant, like what are they known for? What are they about? So you're really using a lot of what you're doing. You're getting your inspiration from sort of the I would say the soul of what you're trying to sort of unearth, this sort of, whether it's a family, right? Is it their primary residence or secondary residence? How are they going to be using this? And you start looking at the architecture, the client, and then the lifestyle of whatever that property or hotel is. Is it a beach hotel? Is it a city hotel? Are people coming to go to the theater and go to dinner? Is it a business hotel? So you start to really look at that DNA, and you use it's like looking at that triangle and saying, okay, here are the points that really sort of I have to really understand and connect. And it's really about connecting the dots. And then you, as a designer, as a creative person, you're bringing what you know to the table in terms of knowing where to get great product that would make sense for these types of, projects, and that will fit the durability, the aesthetic, the price point, the lead times. And those are the things that a lot of times we bring to the table that someone who's very creative but doesn't know the industry, that's what you bring to the table. And having a partner like Vanguard that helps you, or companies that you work with, that you develop a relationship with, they help you kind of make those things happen. But I would say your inspiration really should always be coming from sort of what is the soul of your project, and how are you going to bring that and sort of tell that story. In terms of inspiration, I mean, I have to tell you, I am inspired by walking, just being here for the last, 4 or 5 days, I'm inspired by walking through this building, going through the different floors and seeing things that I hadn't seen before, the way that materials are being used, the way things intersect, the way upholstery, maybe some details. And I do the same thing when I'm going and doing a talk at another showroom with another group. I really think the idea of being open to information and ideas, being supportive of being open, just sort of, going into every situation with open eyes and being interested. And I think if you are at an airport lounge, if you are at a fabulous restaurant, if you travel to an exotic location, all of those things, something as mundane as going to the DMV in an old mid-century building that's kind of run down, you will find a detail in that building that you're like, oh, that was pretty cool. And I bet when they built this building in 1960, that was like a really cool thing that I'm not seeing anymore. Maybe I could bring that in as a detail on the top of our dining table. So I think inspiration is around us all the time.
If you can make
just have to be open
DMV
to it.
exciting,
Well,
that is
yeah, but
that's
by the
me.
way, like it's just, it's like I'll be at an airport, traveling for work, and it's just like I'm looking at like the old airport that they're renovating, looking at the new spaces that they're delivering, and I'm thinking, oh, I think that was a lost opportunity that they didn't. There were some really iconic moments and architectural details that they could have kept and brought, and
You're like, excuse me, I need to talk to
yeah,
somebody
it's like,
really quick.
So, and by the way,
Opportunity
and then I
right
think like, wouldn't that be a cool detail for what I'm working on, whether it's the opening of a doorway for a project or a piece of furniture, or maybe even a textile. I mean, sometimes I'll see someone actually. There was a young person, her name will go unmentioned, who was wearing a fabulous outfit the other day, and I took a picture of it because I was like, "This is a great inspiration for our textile line." So it's like you just see
So you're
things
just
and you go,
curious.
"That's
Like,
interesting."
yeah, it's
Be
just
curious,
curiosity.
be interested, be open, and be enthusiastic. And I think inspiration finds you.
So you're a designer, you're a product designer. So for the interior designers here, which is most of us, how did you bridge that? How did you go from interiors, from TV to product? Was it all integrated, or was it a big step?
They were all very big steps. I mean, as anything that we do in our career, or our lives, when you're getting married, big step. Having children, I'm sure, is a big step.
So
Laura has two now.
It's like
she's made a bunch of
milestone.
steps. But the thing is I don't think you're ever really. If you're really excited about what you're doing, you're generally there a little too early, and you have to figure it out and learn. So, and that is probably everything that you do that's interesting in your life. And I would say that, I studied interior design in college. I studied product design in college. I studied surface pattern design when I was in college, and art history and I took architecture classes. So I knew what I was interested in, and making those transitions from working for a firm to starting my company to managing clients and projects without having the infrastructure that was provided for me. That was a big step. Having someone say to me in an elevator, I think you would have you would translate on television. I was like, what? And so that was a really
That was
big
a
step.
surprise.
And I almost had a heart attack for the first year every day when I was standing in front of that camera. Now I'm like, I don't even see it. I don't even know it's there. It doesn't freak me out. So, I had to learn that. When I started working with Vanguard, and they were really, Vanguard and Cravat were my two first licenses, and they were somewhat like connected because it was the textile and it was the furniture that the textiles would go on, was kind of the way we were looking at it at that time. And this was maybe 16 years ago, I think, maybe 17 when we were even starting the conversation. I was coming at this from, my client needs a dining table that we can't find, or they want something unique and different than what's out there. Let's build a dining table. So I thought, I know how to build furniture. No, you don't. No, you do not know how to build furniture. You know how to make a really expensive piece of furniture that is already sold to a client who paid for it. That is not the business of furniture, or that's not what happens here. So this is a different experience. There are things to learn from that. There are things that overlap. There's knowledge I could bring with me that I think was helpful and maybe even inspirational to what we were doing. But what I had to learn here was I had to understand if I really wanted to design something that I was excited about, I had to figure out, hey, how can we do this in a way where it's cost effective, we can use the materials and the craftsmanship and the correct people that we have access to, the partners, to actually make this happen in a way where it can happen efficiently, effectively, that it can make the construction of it, the quality of it, and that as a designer, you can come in and find this, be excited about it, understand it, see it, show it to your client. They can understand it. You can personalize it and make it your own. Or if you have a showroom, you like this and think it will make sense on your showroom floor? And how does that look financially to both of those different types of businesses? And I had to learn all of that.
So it's a lot of work.
You know what?
It sounds complicated.
Let me tell you, it is complicated when you don't understand it, but when you start to understand it and you learn it, it starts to become intuitive. And I have to say, as a creative business person, which I think that's what we all are, and I think you thinking of yourself as that is really helpful. I think that the challenge of understanding that and the respect of understanding the differences of that, understanding the difference between doing a private client, designing for the design community, and designing for sort of the retail or the showroom community. Those are different DNAs. And to understand those and to understand how to communicate to that, for me, was very exciting because I didn't understand it. It also was part of what we had to do in terms of the design. So that inspired our design.
And there's that curiosity.
Yeah, and there's the curiosity. And then you have to say, oh, you know what? The detail that I love is probably cost prohibitive, but we can come up with a way to understand that, detail and make it, get that vibe and make it happen in a way where it doesn't make a dining table $28,000. And then it makes it very difficult. You have one person in your client base that maybe would be willing to do that. So, and that exists and that's out there. You can buy a beautiful vintage piece of furniture in that situation or design a new piece, but that's not the everyday. That's not what we're doing all the time. And so to understand each one of those and have them cross-pollinate and inspire each other and knowing when to use the right thing at the right time, I think for me was really exciting because I love learning about what I don't know and getting better at what I'm not that good at. So it was fun. And it was exciting.
Accepted.
Yeah.
You're like, yes. So I walked into this showroom to Vanguard 20 years ago when I started sourcing for my first showroom when I launched my firm. And I talked to Michael Weiss, who you probably know.
Yes.
And I said, oh
Very
my
well.
God, I was starry eyed and I'm like young and had all this energy. And I'm like, oh my God, designing a product line. How amazing. I'd love to do that. Can you tell me all about it? And this is all he said. No, he looked at me. He goes, it's a lot of work, and walked away.
Right.
That was it. And I was like, well, great.
Well, I will say this. I would say this. My response, if I were standing there, is I would have turned to you and said, what isn't a lot of work? That anything that's worthwhile in your life, anything that you're excited about, when you have your friends over for dinner and it's, your friend's birthday, it's a lot of work.
What else are we doing?
You know what I mean?
Might as well do it.
If you're going to go out and start dating, it's a lot of work. Taking all those pictures and uploading them online, trying to keep your clothes on. It's a lot of work. No, but, I just think that I think anything you do that's meaningful is a lot of work. And if you really love what you're doing, it doesn't feel like a lot of work. It can be exhausting. It can be frustrating. You can lose your mind for a minute. It happens, trust me. But if you really love what you're doing, there's so many things that come out of that are more, that have more value and more weight than the lot of work part. So I would say this, when you ask people questions, also figure out, you have to ask more than one person. Because some people,
I should have tracked you down.
Some people are glasses half full. Some people are glass half empty. Some people just approach things differently. And each one of those people probably have a nugget of information that will help you and that will guide you. You have to know how to say, who am I asking? If it's like, you can ask 6 moms, hey, what's it like having girls? And you'll get a different answer from each one. But you can say well, my friend who said that, she complains about a delicious cocktail. You know what I mean?
This cocktail is just too sweet.
We already know she's already starting from, she's kind of a pain in the butt. So, but we love her, but so, and then you have your other friend who just will eat anything and thinks everything's great. And you're like, we're not even sure she knows she's inside. So we're going to take that with a grain of salt. So you kind of just figure out like who people are and like ask them and go, I think I understand what you mean. But I'm going to ask a couple of people.
We're polling.
Yeah.
We need
Attitude is everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do we want to accept some questions from the audience? Is anybody
I'll
okay?
with the microphone so we can hear everybody.
And all topics are on the table, yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
Hi, Tom.
let's make this fun.
So this is really serendipity for me. My flight from Boston was delayed. So I was stranded in Washington, D.C. What a problem. I have great memories of there. My husband went to Georgetown. My children spent a lot of time there. They go to
Did you have a hotel room or were you just rocking
got a
around?
hotel room. I got a hotel
Because that's happened to me a few times on purpose, but whatever.
It was great. And, I haven't been in the Capitol in a while, and it's so different since the insurrection. I went on the tour, and I went to Library of Congress. I had never been there in all the years I've been there. But then I went to the National Gallery of Art, and I walked up to the front door. Serendipity. I'm like, it's all rivets. I'm like, Philip Jeffries wallpaper had to be from this.
Right.
So inspiration is everywhere.
Right.
At the
It's
end
all
of the
around
day,
you. Yep.
It's all
Totally.
around.
Yeah. That's way better than the DMV. I'm going to not lie.
Well, I had the Metro.
Yeah. That's awesome. And yes, I totally agree with that. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, just walking, like next to a Beaux-Arts building, there are 15 different, details that you can get for anything you're working on, just walking around a city block in a Beaux-Arts building. And then if it was renovated in, like in the 60s or the 70s or whatever, it was built in the 20s, and you can see some of the details of the doors that are like these really clean details that you would never see, on a building that was built at in the turn of the century. It's really interesting to see even how those things kind of, sort of communicate, or even do they work well together? Do they not? Is it kind of cool? Yeah. It's kind of cool.
Anyone else? Question? You can ask anything.
Yes, there we go.
I would take it.
Yeah.
We come around.
I feel like I'm always full of questions. Is there a specific instance you could think of when you were designing furniture with Vanguard where you would have done it one way and then you learned something and now you do it a different way?
I would say that if we were to do it one way now, would we do it differently? Yes, I would say, we have a lot of conversations when we're developing product about and I'll give you an example. Take a sectional sofa, right? So we have this conversation where what makes more sense sometimes when you're developing a product in its, if you're designing a chair and you're thinking, hey, I would love this maybe someday to be a sofa. And if that sofa were to become a sofa, maybe it could become a sectional.
And I swear you said this yesterday when you sat.
You're looking at that chair and you're thinking, I've got to be thoughtful about looking at this from all four sides to make sure it can do all of these things. And when you design the leg and how that works, you have to make sure it does all those things. Also, sometimes a manufacturer will say hey, we do it like this. We do a corner and then we do a left and a right. And then another manufacturer will say, we do a left and a right with the corner sort of inside, built already into one of the right or the lefts. And it works for different, it works in a different way for different designs. And we, sometimes we'll say hey, this is what we want to do because we think it looks better. And then we have to have that conversation about, well, building this and the legs of this piece, does that make sense for the future of this product? And we have to have that conversation. So that is something where, you're trying to understand something that you're like, okay, because I used to just design a chair and said, this is a great chair. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, you should make a sofa out of that. And you're like, well, it's going to be difficult because of the way the back is. And then how's that going to turn a corner? And is that going to, so you're looking at things differently because you are having that, that conversation is going to happen or potentially could.
4 steps ahead. You've got to think
you have to look at it. Right. So
it's a lot more than just value engineering.
Right. Then what's really interesting is that very often when the manufacturer is looking at it from the 4 steps ahead. They're almost looking at it from an engineering standpoint. Sometimes they're sort of overlooking sort of what the design details could be. And that's why you come together and work as a team. Same thing where you work with an architect and an interior designer, or an architect and interior designer and a landscaper. Hopefully the earlier, I always tell clients, they say, well, when should we bring on the landscape person? When should we bring on the architect? When should we bring on the designer? When should we bring on the lighting person? I say, do it as soon as you can. Build your design team and create. The whole point of it is to create a dialogue so that you can learn from your expertise and you can share and collaborate. The minute the communication breaks down, it becomes more complicated. And I think that, it's just, I think that's sort of the process. So I think that what would we have done differently? I would say, trying to look steps ahead, trying to really understand, not just designing a dining table, but thinking about, could this dining table have a family, and what would that family look like, right? Do they look exactly the same, or are they inspired by each other, or are they line for line the same detail, but just in different proportions, scale, and height? So you kind of have to have that. You start to think about it that way. And again, you start putting these things together, and it creates that DNA. For some collections have similar friends, and some collections are exact duplicates. And
so they're friends and family.
Yeah, but yeah, and so
you
it's
think
just
about it that way.
Yeah.
Like, with that in mind, do you have a favorite child? Is that a thing? Like, in your collection, is it just like, I would never have a favorite child. I have twins. That would be terrible. Favorite dog? I do have a favorite dog. One of them is terrible. So do you have a favorite piece?
And I have a terrible dog who happens to be my favorite.
Maybe the terrible one is my favorite. He's kind of got an attitude. I don't know.
I would say that, I think that pieces that stand the test of time that you've designed are kind of have a special kind of place in your brain. And I would say, for example, this market, one of my favorite new pieces, and was inspired and developed and basically birthed from an original piece of furniture that we designed. So the Strathmore console was, I literally drew that console on brown paper on the floor in the Vanguard factory in 2000. Was it 8? Right. And on brown paper.
And so the dining table,
the details, like the little,
and you all know this console. You may not know it by name, but if you saw it.
So that console is downstairs, and it's right next to the dining table that we introduced. That is the Strathmore dining table. And they are inspired. It was inspired by this piece, and it's not, the details are not exact because it's 16, 17 years later. But they are very close. And the console is still very relevant and beautiful and super stylish, and I think a great design. And we kind of overlooked it for a long time, and it was just recently that I said, it's a piece that people love, and that people are there's continued interest in it, and people love it, and I love it. And so I love that piece because it has that sort of history, but I really love it now that it is responsible for a piece that I also am really excited about and I really love. And I think that sometimes when things are in your life and you love them and they're doing well and they're out in the world and they're making, an impact, it's really interesting to take those things and say, hey, why are we not thinking about this as like, this should be a great opportunity and a springboard to be a dining table, maybe rethink maybe end tables or a coffee table, and taking that same design and flipping it on its side, maybe with a piece of glass. It doesn't need to be exact. It needs to be part of the family, and it needs to, so
evolution.
I love that piece for that reason. And that's a piece that was inspired by one of the first things that we designed. And that design came from a crown molding in a dining room, which was basically a repeat of circles in between a picture rail and a crown. And so that's where the console was born from. And that's why it's called the Strathmore console, because that house was in a neighborhood called Strathmore. Long story. But now we have a new sofa, this market, that I really love. And the sofa...
Do you know the name of it?
Yeah, it's called the Georgica. And the Georgica sofa is... It just has... I would say about 6 months ago, I said to Randy, I go, I'm really feeling like we're missing this sort of, this collision of timeless, tailored with this kind of softness. And I said, I really am sort of seeing this kind of thing. And we started sketching together and drawing and going back and forth. And it was Randy and myself and Xavier, Randy, who works really closely with Randy. We kind of went back and forth with this design. And then once it gets to a certain point, Xavier starts putting it in 3D and we start flipping around and looking at it. And we got really excited about it. And
you birthed a new sofa, baby.
And this new sofa. And then there was just something about it where I was like, it felt like it was... I just felt like it was, I know it's going to sound weird, but like, it was like a woman who was just getting ready to go out to dinner and like walk downstairs and we were like, wow, you look fabulous. It was like, that's what the sofa looked like to me in my head. And I was like, it needed that thing that made it identifiably that in my brain. And that's where we came up with the bullion fringe. And I said, I think we should add this detail because with it, it was like, grabbing your like fabulous purse that you just got and putting it over your shoulder and walking out the door, but we still have it without the fabulous purse, without the bullion fringe, and we're showing it both ways in the sectional and in the sofa. And it was just like it has such a different personality with the different fabric and that little detail, and it's the same exact design.
And if you haven't seen it yet, you will know it as soon as you see it.
It's very sexy.
Yeah, that bullion fringe is everything.
I was really like, I was not, I wasn't prepared to see the fact that it could go from sexy and elegant to sort of like cool and stylish in the same exact product, like 11 feet away from each other. And it was really cool. And I was like, you know what? That's really cool. That's a great design. That's something that I think this has, that was so I loved that piece for that reason, because it just felt like that collaboration of ideas and being pushed to kind of push it further, worked out really well. And I love it. We never know what everyone else thinks until, we hear what people are saying. And
guarantee everyone here is going to think it's fabulous.
Well, I hope. So,
like
but anyways, those are my favorite
coming
pieces
down
right now this morning.
Girl, you look beautiful. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, it was just something about the shape of it and the intersection of the arm and the back that kind of felt like that. I mean, sometimes when you look at a piece of furniture, it just looks like, like a really handsome, like guy in a beautiful, like, Cuccinelli like suit or something like that. Like you say, okay, that's that. I kind of give personalities things as sort of what it looks like and what it feels like and what the story or what the narrative of that piece is. So what I
that's
see,
the case, I need to know who inspired that fur covered bed. Because
that's a good question.
Well, okay, so that's interesting. So that's called the Eastwood bed, and it is really a Parsons bed. Okay, and what's really great about Parsons style anything is that it's really about the scale. Sometimes Parsons can be like a thin Parsons or a wider Parsons or whatever. This is it's kind of a beefier kind of thing, and we now have come out with these Utica dining chairs that are kind of,
I was going to mention,
they are kind of a Parsons style chair that it sort of, you can almost see the sort of the connection of those, fully upholstered just like the bed. You can put a floral fabric on that, like, or a little sort of ditzy kind of like, almost looks like it was like, printed with like a potato block print, which could be kind of very preppy, or it could be very floral and very feminine, or you could do a boucle, or you could do a faux fur or real fur. You can take that shape and you could put it in a historical bed and breakfast with the right fabric. You could put it in a hip hotel or a modern city apartment or a traditional Georgian with like a tailored, really like sort of refined fabric on it. That thing can go anywhere, and it can have any bedding. It can work for a boy or a girl. That bed is basically a clean slate. It is a really fabulous scale, and it is a clean slate. We've shown it in bright red. We've shown it in fur. We've shown it in linen. We've shown it in a boucle. We've shown it in pattern. We've shown it in stripes. It takes on a different personality. We have a different concept for it, again, where I won't tell you what it is, but it's going to be so cool.
Is it is it the big stripe? Are you going to do that?
Sort of, yes. But you're very close.
Okay.
It's a mix of materials on that concept. Intentionally a mix of materials. Intentionally at a certain place. But the thing is this, the new dining chairs are really the same thing. Someone was looking at them yesterday and was like, oh my God, they're so handsome. I love them. And I said, but imagine them around a bamboo kind of game table, or like a white painted sort of vintage oval dining table in a dining room with a floral, like chintzy, waxed, a waxed cotton, like really sort of old school. It would look like something that, Sister Parish would have put in a house, and for the Gettys back in on the West Coast in the 70s, and it would be so chic and so feminine and so cool. And you could also do them in suede and put them in like at a poker table where with cigar ashtrays, and they would look like that's exactly what they were designed for. So I just think they have the versatility to be almost go anywhere and be really stylish and cool and play well with Art Nouveau, with Art Deco, with Georgian, with Empire. They could do anything. They, stainless steel and glass. They really could go in any direction. So I love those kind of pieces that designers have the ability to sort of take on a journey.
I have a very random question, and then we can take another question here. But my random question is this. So when you're speaking, I feel like you're almost seeing this movie play out in your head. Like when you're talking about your creative vision and like the way you're imagining these different pieces. Is that accurate? Like, is that how,
that's
what's going on in your brain?
People usually say, what happens in your head? And I go, it's a lot of really short movies.
That's what I feel like. You've got like this cinematic reel going.
It's a lot of short movies.
Are there people in that?
Yeah, there are, and they have names. One is Pom Pom, and I don't know if I can tell you that story, but it's hilarious.
It's like a rando person named Pom Pom running around and all these.
I made this character up in my head many, many years ago in Los Angeles while I was shooting a TV show, because I shopped at a home store called Pom Pom. That home store is actually at this show, and I bumped into the woman who owns it. And we
saw that.
And we have not seen each other in many years, and it's called Pom Pom. And she is a beautiful, elegant Dutch woman, but I didn't know that.
So are you like, you star so many of my
I had a
movies.
very different vision of who Pom Pom was, and I'm not going to share with you who Pom Pom is in my head, but she is not an elegant woman who it's just not her. So I was like, in my head, I'm laughing as we're talking, and because I'm thinking she has no idea who I had a short film about Pom Pom. You know what I mean? And Pom Pom was not a respectable woman. I'm just going to tell you that. My Pom Pom, she was kind of a hoe. And so in my head, I don't know why.
Your head, not the real one.
Not the real one. She's awesome and she's elegant and she's amazing, and she is not anything like the Pom Pom in my head. So imagine I'm talking to her and I'm trying to like like wrestle with my version of Pom Pom and who Pom Pom is. And that's not her name, but
that's
she owns
her name.
No, she just owns
You're just
Pom Pom.
calling her that.
But I thought Pom Pom owned it. But so nothing was right in my Pom Pom world. But so it is. I have a short little, you know what I mean? It's a little movie I created that made me giggle. And I thought, well, I'll never know the story about Pom Pom, and I don't need to. Cut to 25, 30 years later, I'm like, hey, Pom Pom girl, what's going on?
All right, we're going to take a question. Hi, I'm so grateful to be able to hear all of your insights. So awesome. But bringing it to the client side of questions, and again, I'm so curious how you deal with like a client when, you know, knowing, their budget, their aesthetic, your point of view and your sensibilities in terms of how you approach the product. Love what you said and really relate to it. But when you're at that point with a client, and I'm sure I can imagine them not trusting you.
No, yeah.
Cannot imagine that, but
No, it depends on the client, but yes, yeah.
But
Some people just aren't trusting.
right. Although they hire you, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. But from our point of view, what does a conversation look like between you and the client? These are the insights I'm looking for, where you're trying to convince them of something, with all
Right.
the
I will tell you.
budget
So I will
and
tell
all
you.
of that. Like, what does that look like for
Okay,
you?
I will tell you. So what that looks like, trying
good
to communicate to a client effectively, there is no formula. What you have to do is, I don't know how many people here have more than, like, say you have 3 or 4 kids, right? Okay. So think of your kids as your clients. Now, each one of those kids is probably at some point going to be dealing with a very similar sort of coming of age moment, right? And let's say it's about, making friends at school or, going to a party and there's alcohol, whatever it is. Each one of those kids may have a very different conversation with the same parent in the same house about the same thing, because that maybe daughter number 1 can handle a conversation that's pretty direct. But daughter number 3 is like, she can cry at any moment, and she's a little more fragile, and she needs to be given that information in a way that is a little bit more time needs to be spent, and you have to relate it to things that she can understand and relate to, and that she can wrap her head around it, right? So so think of your clients as, in that way where there is no real formula, right? So sometimes when you're talking to a client, and let's say it's a husband and a wife, or a husband and a husband, or a wife and a wife, but let's just say a husband and a wife, right? The husband is like, I don't know anything about design, but he collects cars and he collects watches, right? So if you're saying like, hey, I really think you should buy this sofa, and he's like, I don't know why. I don't know. This sofa's $1,000 more than the other sofa. Let's just get the other one. I say, okay, well, let's talk about a Breitling and a Rolex. Like, what's the price difference? And why would you're wearing a Rolex. Why did you make that choice? Tell me about it. And let's say, I would say this, that sofa is the Breitling and this sofa is the Rolex. Oh, you know what? I get it. If your client is, let's say a housewife who is like, oh my God, I love that. That's exactly what I wanted. And then the very next day she says, well, I asked all my friends and my kids what they thought, and everybody told me something different. So I'm very confused and I don't know if I can make a decision. I would say double knot your track shoes and start running. But if you do stick around, if you do happen to stick around, I would say you've got to like understand, like, okay, like what is important to this person? Is she a cook? Does she love cooking? Is she a great mom? Is she like really worried about like what is her thing? And then let's take her thing and use that as a way to say, let me just say this, like, I know that you are like in love with your handbags, right? So would you ever wear that at night? Or is that what you have with you right now at 3:00 in the afternoon? Is that what you're going to take to dinner tonight? No, I'm going to do this one. Okay. So that sofa that you love is great for your family room because that's the vibe of that sofa. The one we're talking about is only this deep. It's got a tight seat and a tight back. This is for your living room.
It's your clutch.
Don't listen to your children who are like, just think it's cool. We can find a place for all of these things, but you have to find the right place for these things. The same way you're going to do that with the purses that you love. And then all of a sudden you're speaking their language and they start to trust you because they think and they know and they understand that you're actually looking at it from their perspective and that you're taking the time and not just saying like, listen, you hired me for a reason, just trust me and be a bully, which you can be, which sometimes you have to do that. But I would say try to communicate with them in a way where they know that you are looking at it from their perspective and trying to get them comfortable in their skin with their decision. And so they know that when they go home at night and somebody tells them, oh, I like this better, they go, you know what? I don't. I like what I chose. And I think it's the right thing. And then they'll tell that purse story and their friend will go, she's crazy.
We have one more
Why is she
question.
talking about purses? I said sofa. She a nut.
One more question, and then we will wrap it up for everybody's market.
Okay, this might piggyback on that a little bit with how to communicate with your clients. But as a designer, a lot of clients just want to follow trends, and you have to build a little bit of a confidence within yourself that you don't, maybe you don't want to follow trends at all.
Right.
How do you also build the confidence with your client that you can be brave enough to go outside of what is trendy? Or
This is the first thing I say to anybody who's following a trend. I go, when you go to Lowe's and they say, light fixtures with, crystals are trending. I go, that's Home Depot language. And by the way, God bless them. And I love that store. I can spend hours. I get lost there. I love going to Home Depot. I do not have a problem with it. But they use the term trending because that is the demographic for the concept of trends. Themes. When someone says, what's the theme of my house? I go, no. We don't know. No, you don't hire a designer for a theme. That is what you do when you are like shopping at Wayfair to do your dorm room. Like that's a theme. Not your house is not a theme. This is, you are building a place to have your life, a fabulous life. So I would say this to your client. The trend that we're going to follow is you. You are your trend. How do you live? What do you like? How do you like to entertain? How do you like to what do you do when you get up in the morning? What is important to you? You are your trend. And we will make it feel current and fabulous and connect with what's happening now and the architecture and the lifestyle and the community. But people are going to come to your house and say, oh my God, this house is so John and Elizabeth. This house is not what's trending at Lowe's. You know what I mean? This trending is low-hanging fruit. It's a basic, it's the most basic way for a marketing program to communicate with somebody who knows nothing about design. But you have hired a designer that knows a lot about what design is. So we are going to go so many steps above what's trending that we are actually going to be trend setters. And that
John and Elizabeth are going to love that.
And that we're going to set a trend. We are going to do something that actually is going to make people that are following trends feel like they didn't make a great decision. They're going to be like, oh, I wish I did this, that I didn't follow a trend that was formulated in a conference room in somewhere America by 15 people that were like, I think this is the color of the year. Okay, well, I don't like that color. So it's not the color of my ear. You know what I mean? But whatever. So you know what I mean? It's like, I love that for you if you need that, but you have a designer. We are setting trends. We are taking ideas and giving them legs and life and connecting them to people and architecture and a lifestyle. And we're telling a story. You know what I mean? So that's why those little movies are so important, because those little movies are a story and we are storytellers.
I think that is a fabulous closing statement. Excellent. Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And everyone have a wonderful market. Are you going to hang out and answer questions?
I am. Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah. There's
And
still
go downstairs and see the collection too. If you haven't,
please come down.
or
Yeah.
it will
Laura and
turn
I
you
will
on.
be down there, and Randy will be down there, and yeah, we'd love that. Thanks for coming out. We appreciate you, and look forward to getting to know you better. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Ready? Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast, coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on DesignDash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.